přednášce Adama Budaka, jenom krátce upozorňuji, že vlastně přednáška bude v angličtině, takže plynule hned přejdu do angličtiny. So welcome everyone. We welcome Adam Budak, the chief curator of the National Gallery in Prague, that we met maybe 10 years ago when I was studying in the HISC, and Adam was going there as a tutor, and he has a long trajectory of curatorial work. He was curating one of the first Prague biennials that was taking place here, maybe 2004 or 5?
2005.
Then
Sorry, 2003.
2003. Then you were curating the Manifesta.
And then there was 2005 Prague Biennale 2.
Okay. Then the Manifesta in Trento, that was 2007, I think. And then I think you have a long trajectory of working in institutions, public institutions in Europe, like the Graz, Kunsthaus Graz. And then you moved to the States in the Hirshhorn Museum, but I'm sure you can speak about your experiences. So I'll give you the word, and then maybe we can like interact. I would like to invite everybody to ask questions directly to Adam, so the dynamic of the lecture just becomes more like interactive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to welcome all of you. Thank you for coming. This is not going to be a lecture. I'm very much scared by this term. I would rather prefer to be a conversation with Andre and of course with you. So don't accuse me of not being prepared. It's more in a way spontaneous meeting with you. As you know, I'm new to this city, to this community, to this scene. And I would love to use all those invitations, very generous ones, for which I'm very grateful, in order to get in touch with you and to listen to you, because we all should shape the identity of this institution, which is called National Gallery in Prague. And this effort has to be collaborative in order to become successful. And therefore I hope that not only today but in the future we will meet each other very often, and we will exchange what I think is a key to a good communication, which means expectations, and my perception, imagination, or a sort of sense of vision of what National Gallery should be, or what its role should be within the city, within the local context as well as international context. I asked Andre to play this very iconic concert of Pink Floyd from early 70s because it alludes a little bit to the current program of the National Gallery. It is a soundtrack used by Rachel Rose for one of her films that were shown in the first chapter of Moving Image Department, the importance of being a moving image. And this is a sort of nostalgic reference to the past. I would also like maybe for 10 minutes to play something which does the opposite, goes in an equally nostalgic way towards the future. And this is a film by Neil Cummings and Marysia Lewandowska called Museum Futures, that you might remember from 2010 exhibition in Docks. It's a fantastic film that anticipates the shape, identity, and the role of museums or entire museum industry and its role in civil society. I would imagine that this fragment might sort of inspire us to talk about exactly what museums or modern and contemporary art, but not only spaces could be, and what the role should be now and in the future. So maybe can we play this again? Museum Futures was commissioned by Moderna Museet for the 50th anniversary of Moderna Museet museum exhibition space. And as you know, the National Gallery in Prague is also expecting quite nice anniversary. This is 220th anniversary in February next year. So the 5th of February 2016, we will celebrate 220th anniversary. And let's look what the future of the museum might be. This is a very grotesque, if not caricature-like, of what the future of the museum in 2058, where we are moving at this moment, might become.
Ni hao. Hey. Hello? Hello, is that iron liquid?
Ni hao. Yes, Ms. Chan. This is Ayan. We are in a sync.
Thank you so much for finding time. I know you must be very busy with this and
we really admire your work on mid-20th century image ecologies, especially your research on archival practice.
Well, I'm flattered. For many Asian non-market institutions, your pioneering work with long-term equity contract has been inspirational too.
So, let's begin.
Okay, just to refresh, for the centenary, I'd like to archive your life-like recall of Moderna.
Yep, that's fine. I've nailed about 20 minutes.
Okay, life. Maybe we could start with some personal history. What were you doing before you became executive at Moderna Museum 3?
Well, I joined Moderna 2 in 2049, almost 10 years ago. First as advisor to the development working group, then as part of the governance team. I participated in the forking of Moderna 3 in 251 and was elected fixed-term executive in 252. Until today. I've got another 4 years in the project.
And before that?
Immediately before joining Moderna, I collaborated in the exhibition program at the Mahfa cluster in Mumbai for 6 years, although more in resource provision. That's where we worked on a version of that equity bond issue you mentioned.
And before that?
In programming, again at Tate in Doha for 4 years, particularly developing exhibitionary platforms, and even before that, I participated in research on cultural governance for the Nordic Congress of the European Multitude for 6 years. I suspect exhibition agency and governance are my real strengths.
And we should dive into the end. Could you briefly say something of why Moderna 3 devolved and why was it necessary?
As you can imagine, there was a lot of consultation beforehand. It's not something we did without due diligence. And for almost 40 years, Moderna version 2 has explored and developed the exhibitionary form. And we pioneered the production of many collaborative exhibitions, resources, and assemblages. We helped build robust public, what you prefer to term non-market cultural networks, and scale those networks to produce our icons, part of the vast global public domain. And we have continually nurtured and developed emerging art practice. And Moderna can proudly, and quite rightly, say that we participated in shaping the early 21st century movement of art, from an exhibitionary
maybe we can start the conversation from this moment on, yeah?
Spectacle and consumption, to that of embedded co-production.
Do you mean that?
Of course, there were many complex factors involved, but we were agent in the shift from a heritage cultural mindset of broadcast to that of emergent peer-to-peer meshworks. Following the logical practice, we became an imminent institution. Although, having said all that, we've not really answered your question, have we? Given that Moderna 2 continues its exhibitionary research, some of us believe that exhibition as a technology and immanence as an institutional logic needed to be subject to radical revision. So this is what we intend to explore with Moderna 3. We want to execute some of the research, to enact, to be more agent than immanent.
Okay, I was wondering, could you say immanent?
Overwrite, but
maybe we can just cut off the sound and it can be played. So this is just a teaser, right? Because this film actually introduces a project I'm currently working on with all curators in the National Gallery that leads towards the exhibition called Generosity, working title, which will be open on February 5th, 2016 to celebrate the anniversary. As you know, the National Gallery in Prague had been established in 1796 as an act of generosity, in fact. majority of the museums post-Enlightenment until now are actually, especially in America, but through the entire globe, the results of donations, gifts, exchange strategies, and really very profound acts of generosity. In 1796, this so-called group of patriotic friends of the arts realized that the quality of aesthetic sensitivity in the local community in Bohemian lands is pretty low. So they started to think what to do, and they thought, okay, we're gonna establish Academy of Fine Arts. This is how AWU was established. And then they said something else. So they said, okay, let's do picture gallery. And then they established picture gallery, which was squatted some historical palaces around here, and actually it does this process until now, because, as you know, within 220 years, the National Gallery had not managed to build any new original new building for its own collection. And as you know, modern and contemporary is hosted now by the building which in 1929 was perceived as extremely pioneering building. When Le Corbusier came here for the opening of Beleteshny Palace, he said, like, oh, this is not an architecture, this is too radical, this is too big, you know, like. And he at that time, of course, didn't build any more kind of significant buildings, only small kind of houses, public spaces, not really. So he was simply jealous. But we have to appreciate the fact that Beleteshny is an icon. The Beleteshny is a building that really anticipated amazing tendencies for the entire 20th century. And it was the first one, the very pioneering one. And I think this institution should sort of inherit, as the one that inherited this sort of mission, should continue and implement it in the future. I started with this because here there is a caricature of what this museum industry might become, you know, with the Middle East expansion, with all those, you know, growing industries and the proliferation and the growing importance and the pressure from the art market side, the private collections and collectors and their influence on public institutions functioning. And then last but not least, of course, the taste and the changing, evolving, possibly, or devolving sensitivity of the audience. So this is what bothers me the most as the one who arrived here not even a year ago, hardly speaking the language or none of this, having a certain knowledge of Central Europe, coming from this region, but not being familiar, although I studied here and I worked at a couple of occasions here, but not really being able to grasp what is simply being called expectations. Because I think that those expectations are very hard to be grasped. And I don't think it's only this city or this region problem. I think museums and audiences are in crisis, because it was similar in Austria, where I worked for nearly 9 years. It was even worse to be identified in DC, because then the audience is simply hard to be identified. I thought that here maybe those expectations can be more clear and more visible, or that certain hopes connected to what this institution's mission could be, maybe because of the scale that matters so much within this country or this region. But still, this is the process of learning what the program of institution like this could be, not only modern contemporary collection, but all collections from old masters down to the one which is in Beleteshny. Maybe we can just move to the conversational mode of this presentation, and if you could help me.
Yeah, I was thinking about if you could point out some differences between the museums that you worked before, either in Graz or in the Hinthorn. I think, like, both of them, they were founded and based, and they're identity is a bit completely different than the National Gallery, which is clearly established as something as a residuum of the national kind of a vision of what art should be, how art should be presented, as something as Venice Biennial is the perfect example of. So maybe you can speak about the different aspects that you find.
I think one of the aspects that kind of runs through all those institutions I was connected to is the architecture before we move into this notion of national. Because I started, my first job as curator was in Krakow, where I come from, in 1965 brutalist architecture of the so-called bunker of art, former communist institutional construct of Bureau of Artistic Exhibitions, shaped a little bit what now we can compare with FRAC system in France. So each bigger city in Poland used to have this BWA, and they were city galleries. They are still city galleries under other names at this moment. But it was a brutalist architecture designed by a female architect, female Polish architect, which was also a phenomenon at that time. And then when I moved to Graz, it was a brand new situation because in 2003 Graz was culture capital of Europe, and within this context a new building of Kunsthaus Graz was erected according to actually very visionary drawings from early 60s by such a revolutionary architect like Peter Cook, Archigram. So this biomorphic, organic, crazy, so-called friendly alien entered a very old small town, Gothic town of Graz, as a totally kind of unusual, futuristic or neo-futuristic, like kind of Kaplitzky, if Kaplitzky was able to build a museum space.
I remember that you were making a couple of presentations of different shows. You were present during your stay in Graz, and what struck me is that the exhibition space is so difficult to handle because it's so specific and very much anything you put inside just looks
well, you have
uninteresting in comparison to the architecture.
Well, certainly, maybe you know that this building of Peter Cook and Colin Fournier, Kunsthaus Graz, is much more revolutionary than what we consider as a kind of new icon of extraordinary, controversial museum architecture, which is Guggenheim in Bilbao. Guggenheim in Bilbao is nothing in comparison what challenge Kunsthaus Graz creates, because it's so far away from any cubes, first of all, and so far away from any whiteness. Everything is gray mesh and everything is round. Everything is, organic. So it is as if curators or museum people were given a skin or a certain shape, but each time you approached a new exhibition working with new artists, you had to insert organs, meaning walls or whatever exhibition design. So the curatorial practice always involved a kind of threesome between an exhibition designer or an architect, artist, and of course curator. So the whole process was much more creative than any kind of standard situations we encountered from the iconic white cube position. Therefore, the sensitivity towards architecture is a point of departure, because each project is in a way responsive to what is given there per definition in a way, and necessity as well. And this was also continued in a way in the Hirschhorn, because you may know the architecture of the Hirschhorn, again brutalist, this time 1974. Brutalist shelter like atomic bomb shelter cylinder. Amazing architecture with a circular line as a leading line, so kind of a little bit more modest version of this crazy Kunsthaus Graz curved line. But again, this very seductive architecture and very inspiring. So always the architecture acted as both a provocation, because many artists such as Tatiana Trouvé, with whom I worked for Kunsthausgrad, she just made a project out of hatred. Then Katharina Grosse, with whom I also worked for Kunsthausgrad, made a project out of love. So there were many emotions and feelings, or are, being attached to work in the space simply will not leave you indifferent. You have to express yourself, or you have to kind of identify your attitude towards at the moment when you start thinking about what should be there. But anyways, it's always about producing in spaces like this. Although when we work on the show of Ai Weiwei in the Hirschhorn, we, upon his absence, of course, we had to deal with existing work, so the site specificity was not possible. However, the masterfulness of Hirschhorn interior architecture is simply the fact that whatever you put inside of it, it looks beautiful. It looks amazing. It looks stunning. And this is really the power of museum architecture. This balance between its own identity and its own, signature style and autonomy, and the possibility for the artist to enter a very interesting, not peaceful, but interesting relationship, so that you feel the presence of architecture, but at the same time it's not too dominant. Yes, like the case of Kunsthausgrad.
Maybe we can go to the building that we all know, the Trzecini Palace. Do you have any clear plans how you want to change it in terms of the exhibition displays, or what are the future plans with this building, with this architecture that is also
This is impossible to answer this question, because, as you know, there's a debate going on right now what the future of Trzecini Palace should be. And I've always expressed my absolute devotion and love for this building. I think it's a fantastic exhibition space, although not built for visual arts, but this is the place for the future. This is the place which, with the artists as well as with architectural interventions, can be adapted towards in a better way even than it is at this moment. And there are already projects and proposals that envision those kind of changes. So I'm talking about things that are totally possible. And I totally believe that with certain interventions you may turn this building of the Veleteshny, of the Trade-Fair Palace, which we can call at this moment an amazing container, into the container that is going to be functional and that is going to meet all standards, as well as new art forms demands regarding dimension, scale, and so on. So the diversity of spaces in the Veleteshny Palace is what is the strength of this architecture. And as much as I believe in architecture, and I would be the first one to criticize any new ideas of building a new building, I do think absolutely this city needs new architecture, but having such space of potentiality which is Veleteshny Palace, we should explore these potentialities and we should convert it. Like the best exhibition spaces, I would say, exist in spaces that are converted. Look at Tate Modern, for instance, because there is we shouldn't deny this legacy of the building, which is so important, and it's a strength of this building, its history too, its importance, in the past. And we should really do everything in order to embrace it with love. I think it's not an easy love, but who said love is easy? Love is demanding, love is a labor, and only if we are able to invest this labor into making love for this building possible, then it's fine. Like nobody loved Pompidou at the beginning, but now it's an iconic building too. And I think that Veleteshny combines in itself Pompidou, Tate Modern, and Guggenheim from New York. Everything is in there. Voyeuristic element, industrial element, and revolutionary element. Something to be proud of.
Can we speak maybe about your vision, how, because National Gallery is not only veletržní palác, of course, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
There are many different buildings, and your position as a chief curator entitles you not only to look after the veletržní palác, but also like
yes.
the different collections that it belongs to. So veletržní. So could you tell us a bit more about the vision of where the direction, how these collection should be displayed?
Yeah. I would like to announce before Katarina is going to leave this. Too late. Hi. I wanted to announce the panel discussion. Exactly. I would like to. Yeah, which I would like to announce right now. So at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock. Is it 6? Yeah. There is a discussion with Katarina Rusnáková, the curator of the Czech Pavilion of the current Venice Biennale. Jiří David, the big guy, you know, who represents Česká republika, and Karel Sirp, the main expert on Slovenská epopeia. So please come to auditorium on the 6th floor. Yeah, this vision that includes the entire National Gallery very much uses my experience of working in Graz, because Kunsthaus Graz is a part of so-called Universal Museum Janeum, one of the second oldest museum in Austria from 1811, and the largest museum in Austria, which consists of 15 departments, including scientific, cross-scientific, zoology, botany, archaeology, also old masters. So it's an equivalent of the Natural History Museum and Visual Arts Museum, right? From old masters through prints and drawings, like National Gallery, down to modern contemporary, and a Kunsthalle, which Kunsthaus Graz was. Plus, of course, those scientific departments. And while working there for 9 years nearly, we were very much concerned about the common identity, the identity of all houses to be considered one institution. And of course, contemporary language, which we are using, of visual arts, was a very important kind of glue, right? So we always were trying to attract artists to those other sort of cross-disciplinary themes and parts in order to manifest that, the sense of belonging. And I think the sense of belonging is extremely important, because this unites all languages, and suddenly we speak one language, and we kind of constitute one identity of the whole institution. So one part of this vision leads towards the kind of investment in other departments with some sort of processes of translations in between different time levels, in between different languages, in order to make the work of old masters more understandable through the language that we speak at this moment. So the series of interventions and site-specific projects done by contemporary artists within those other departments, a certain act of making those other venues, 3 historical palaces at the castle, or Kinski Palace, or even St. Agnes, live its new life that corresponds with the life we live now.
Maybe, since you mentioned the talk that's going to take place at 6 in the National Gallery, we can speak a bit more about the recent event that you, so to say, supervised for the National Gallery, and that was the presentation of Jiří David, where you acted as a garant, which is a bit like a strange position for a curator, in my opinion. But maybe you can develop a bit more about this project that recently
Yeah, well, as you know, National Gallery in Prague is a commissioner for the Venice Biennale for the Czech Pavilion, which is shared together with the Slovak National Gallery. So it's a joint responsibility, and it's a huge challenge. The Venice Biennale is supported by the state, and as we talked about this before, the feeling when you walk through Giardini is just that suddenly someone comes down and bombs the whole thing because everybody suffers of this. The Venice Biennale is such a dated event from the end of 19th century and does not correspond at all with what's going on in the world at this moment. São Paulo Biennale, as you may remember, the second largest and oldest biennale in the world, was also based upon national representations, and maybe 15 years ago São Paulo Biennale dropped this kind of dated way of presenting works. Of course, with Venice Biennale is different because of this, again, sense of belonging with the national pavilions and the entire city being built according to early 20th century utopian vision of national representations. What was actually incredible feeling for myself, as for the first time acting as a commissioner, was to what extent even the geography of Giardini reflects power relations, especially in the 20s. So again, you know, something which belongs to the past. When you take into consideration the location of the Czech Pavilion, which is right next to French, next to Nordic, in front of Japanese and Russian, and next to German Pavilion, and by the way, Germany prolonged their opening speech, and as you can imagine with their amplifiers, they made our opening impossible because it was simply too loud. So again, Germans invaded this part of the world. But the fact that Czech Pavilion, which was erected in 1926, occupies such prominent location in Giardini, so symbolically distributed amongst countries, is very telling in regards to what Czechoslovakia used to mean once, especially in the 20s. But now, of course, how to deconstruct the national. It's a Vanity Fair of national identities, the Venice Biennale, and it's a kind of childish play, indeed, that doesn't make any sense, but the show must go on, and of course everybody continues with this. The national has to be redefined, but still it exists within old structures, and one of them is, of course, the National Gallery. Not only in Prague, but each country has a national gallery because each country has a national heritage, which is reflected in the culture and in the arts. And again, this is something that we are very much preoccupied in the National Gallery at this moment. And therefore, yet another event to celebrate 220th anniversary will be a big symposium on the phenomenon of the National Gallery and across the globe, right? So we are bringing representatives of national galleries from many places, such as Bahamas, for instance, where curating or the vision or the mission in Bahamas is certainly a different challenge than the one in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., or in Canada, or in Poland, or in Romania, not to mention, of course, national museums in China.
Or in the Middle East.
Or in the Middle East, yes. So, but all this is what I started this presentation from, is how to really get the sense of expectations. Because the national is shaped by the society, right? By its politics, by its culture, by its history, and by the current society, such as you. So the audience is the main fabric of this national. And then, if we think about the kind of new definition of the national within the global world, how do we balance the national and the international? So again, coming back to what we anticipate for the anniversary, we are putting 2 exhibitions that deal with the global issues or represent global art. So it's going to be on the one hand African art exhibition, on the other hand Chinese art exhibition. And all of them connected with a certain aspect of the political, because this is what concerns us the most, the politics of today.
I don't know, maybe we should ask the public to ask any question to Adam, since he's available here to...
Yeah, I just want to, yes.
I have a question. I would look at this lecture by the theme of this position that you want about it, apart from your current position. How you perceived it before, or how the people outside Czech Republic perceive it?
I think the position of modern Czech art is very well grounded, and it has its strong, maybe not strong, but it has its own position. I remember a year ago a very important exhibition in the Jewish Museum in New York called Other Primary Structures, which included the work of Kolibal. And this was like sensational for the whole East Coast. This exhibition that referred to a legendary exhibition of 1966 called Primary Structures that introduced minimal art to American audience. And now the kind of reenactment of this exhibition with the participation of the artists from this region, as if the geopolitical situation was different. And the presence of Kolibal was extremely strong and significant. I think a lot must be done in order to make this position of both modern and contemporary present. I think the whole community has to be activated in order to make this happen. I repeat again this notion of collaboration. It has to be a collaborative effort, yes? And very often my colleagues, they ask me about the Polish phenomenon, because the Polish art, contemporary art especially, is so present internationally. It has a really very strong presence, and no doubt about this. And I do think that this is just because simply the community itself is stronger, and there are also individuals that are able to mediate this relation between the East and the West, or inside and the outside. And maybe we were lucky during the communism time because we had some amazing individuals like Richard Stanislavski, who was a director of the Museum of Art in Łódź, who was able to communicate in the time of isolation with the West. It's like, you know, we actually didn't have Vincent Kramasz, yes? And you had Vincent Kramasz, who brought the best Picasso ever painted to Prague. So there are treasures, there are hidden treasures and sleeping beauties here. We just have to be, we identify myself, we just have to be kind of more proud of this and more united. I mean, it sounds banal, but you know, as I said, I've been here for less than a year, and I've been guiding so many foreigners through the Veletešní Palace, and everybody is so fascinated. And these are people from New York, from Paris, from the centers of the world. And you know, it's very often that we don't appreciate what we have at home, that we look you know, at others and we think that they are better, nicer and richer and more attractive. But what you have here is incredible, and only if you, again, invest this love into this, and this love will radiate towards the outside. and then everything is going to be fine. I think I'm just sharing all those Catholic feelings with you, but I think it's as simple as it is, and then this kind of attitude will facilitate all structures. Structures are operated by people, you know, and they are not machines. They are us, and if we don't moderate them the way we want and the way they should work, they will never send any message outside to this world who is so interested in coming to this city, to this country.
So I understand you are saying the good work is here, but it is not presented well in the outside world.
Yeah, I think we should improve this, definitely. Plus we should really, I think, be courageous enough to not to repeat what is being done somewhere, but to really be able to or know that we can do it better than others. You know, that it's not that the London is, we have to look at London. No, we want London to come here.
What about the contemporary artists or the young artists? I guess the Anglo-Saxon culture is much better in exporting their young, rising artists, stars to the outside world. Probably are not.
Maybe I can enlarge the question a bit. What do you think is what feeds such a climate, like, you know, the British situation in London some 50 years ago, or the Swiss?
Yeah, I think we should not look at the British, because British is an artificial construction. This YBA, come on, nobody cares about this, and this is the past. This was like a fashion, like collection winter 96, 97. Come on. What is really fascinating is what happened in Poland. That's true. But again, you know, what happened in Poland? There was a group of young people who knew how to use the legacy of the past. Of course, they were accused of stealing this legacy. Yeah? I'm talking about Foxhall. But at the same time, they were clever enough to connect the legacy with the contemporary. So they were able to make a kind of joint package where Edward Krasiński, an icon of modern and early contemporary, appeared on the scene, international scene, together with Wilhelm Sasnal. Sasnal started to paint his paintings, you know, in the garage. And then 5 years later, there was a queue of collectors waiting for his paintings, and he was in Hausenwild. Yeah. So this is to use the moment, to believe, and to come up with a certain strategy that is, you know, I cannot believe that someone like Kolibal does not have a good gallery, is not being represented anywhere. Yeah. And why is it so? Tell me. Now we did an exhibition in the Veletishny, and already 5 galleries are knocking on the door, and he doesn't want, because maybe he's not used to it. Yeah? But it is totally possible, and Kolibal is only one of I don't know, big number of those strong modern artists. You know, in autumn, we are going to present Maria Bartusova exhibition. What a scandal! Bartusova, born in Holeszowice, 3 streets away from Veletishny. No single work in the collection of the National Gallery. Never shown in Prague. Never shown in Česká republika. This is a big mistake. You are sleeping. Where are those curators? Where are those institutions? This would have never happened in Poland.
How can we wake up? How can we wake up? How can we wake up?
Well, you shouldn't argue so much one with another. and you should just you should collaborate. I'm repeating this. It's not that you look at the National Gallery and you have this demanding, this requesting attitude, you know, that no, you should participate. You should. I know maybe it was fucked up for so many years, and you don't trust or you boycotted. You know, when I was doing Prague Biennale here, 2003, 2005, there were those, you know, stickers everywhere. Yes, and some artists were doing, you know, stinky things in front of something. So, but maybe this trauma should be healed. I don't know, and maybe the highest time, you know, if we care, and that's it. It's just if we don't do it together, and that's why I wanted to do this story about generosity, because without this we cannot move. And again, you know, talking about the vision and this unity between collections is that I would love to put many to curate exhibitions within departments. So not that each department or collection is doing its own program, but we do it together, cross-departmental or cross-collection. Like Viva Musica, which maybe you saw this, it was a kind of in-between collections exhibition. But I want to do more projects that talk about us, who we are, right? And this one about generosity is a portrait of an institution. And it will be to a large extent based upon our stories, yes, that shaped this institution, that contributed to collections, to what it is now, within the whole kind of discourse and debate on what museums, where are, and so on. Like Hirschhorn is named after Hirschhorn, the collector who donated the entire collection of masterpieces in 1966 to the government of America. And then within 10 years, government of America built a building at the mall. Yeah, and incorporated this modern contemporary art museum within the Smithsonian, which is a national gallery in Prague. Yeah, you know, really sensational. The Jewish guy from Latvia, with his name and the National Mall, part of the Smithsonian institution. This is incredible. 2 days ago I was at the Academy looking at the maquette of Avu Diplomanti. It means exhibition which will be hosted by the National Gallery in 3 weeks in the Veletechny. And of course, there was no refreshment there. We would need a refreshment. So, and I mean, maybe it's really incorrect for me now to criticize something which was done by my colleagues. I mean, if we are not fair, you know, we will never, if we are not critical, do you know what I mean? If we're gonna say that everything is fine, then we, of course, won't change anything. But what I've seen on this maquette was like exactly what you say. It's like I thought it's a Salon Refusé in, you know, 1907 or the end of 19th century, something like that. And this is the show that they want to open in 3 weeks. And you know, when I ask for whether this can be done differently, they say, no, this is what it is. And there's no, I think there's no life in it, of course. There's no blood circulation that would make the organism alive. The exhibition of Bartusova I'm curating for autumn is called Exhibition as an Organism. There must be a vivid, living organism. That's what exhibition as a form of speech, and the museum as a place, the political place in a way where things are being shaped and communicated locally, internationally. This should be like this, because it's a dead body. It's like a corpse. And yeah. So I don't know, it's just this kind of, as you call it, refreshment, or waking up, or a certain energy. I think this energy here is either fragmented, or reduced, or unexplored. It's not there yet. You know, maybe, yeah, maybe when it's put together, it is becoming this engine that can move things. Of course, an institution like the National Gallery is a very old construct. There is an incredible bureaucracy in it. It's, and no matter who's going to come there, who will be brought down to save it, will not move it. If you have you can be a good driver, but if the car is old, without parts and so on, you won't go on. You won't move it. You need new parts. You need new engine. So of course, the structure has to be changed. And for instance, our concept for the new structure was just accepted by the ministry. So it will be finally implemented within those forthcoming months. Talking about the future, we have to hire people. We need to form new teams because, and especially modern contemporary is really very weak. So we just selected a new director of modern contemporary. There's no director of 19th century, no director of old masters yet. But again, there is a call for proposals, call for candidates, and nobody is interested. And this really reflects how much you care about this institution. Like, listen, the call for directors for 3 leading positions in the National Gallery, and for the 19th century there's 1 candidate. For old masters, 4 candidates, and none of them qualifies. And 4 candidates for modern contemporary. If this was a call for directors in a shitty Kunstverein, in a small tiny village in Germany, there would be over 200 people. And this is how you care. And that's why the condition is the way it is. That's why those artists, they have no access to the outside because institutions are not doing it. If institutions are not going to host I don't know, 15 trustees coming from Walker Art Center and they will not open the door, then nobody will know, who Kolibal is, When now the Walker Art Center trustees came, everybody was asking, where can we buy those drawings? Like, they would love to get this, yes? So, but you have to facilitate this. That's why the generosity show is going to be also about hospitality. Because this place is not, hospitable enough. It is a hospital at this moment. And I really feel like a doctor because you just really have to heal everything. Huh?
1 year ago, we were just starting to collaborate with Untitled, and now we have some lectures about contemporary art, about how to create, because Charles University is like old traffic.
Yeah, but again, I really strongly believe in the role of institutions. And back in 2002, I organized a big symposium, really huge, with like 60 leading curators. At that time, when this kind of process of proliferation of curatorial programs only started. So it was called Polyphony of Voices and Methods of Working with Artists. I wasn't even using the word curating. And because I wanted to establish curatorial program at the institution, like the Apple or like Whitney. It didn't happen. But then, the last session on education in curating, I organized in the Art History Institute of the Jagiellonian University. And 1 year later, I was invited to actually initiate a curatorial program, which was the first postgraduate curatorial program in Poland and
East Europe or Central Europe?
Maybe Central Europe. And it was so successful. It also raised appetite of, because all graduates, they thought that immediately after graduating, they're gonna get jobs in major institutions in Poland, which was the case at some point, because nothing was a fiction there. Nothing was a simulation, everything was real. But then again, it was a really beautiful, astonishing to me, example of collaboration amongst the institutions, amongst the individuals, including public and private. And it can really work. And this is the big part of this awakening. if we really realize that there's an amazing potentiality, but you have to contribute to this, and you know, understand what difficulty an institution like this or the management of the institution like this goes through, which means depending upon the state political machinery, which you know limits you so much. And then, I mean, maybe I'm dramatizing, but you know, when you have on the one hand political situation which fucks you up, and then on the other hand you have this audience who is like never happy, you know, like, so then the only thing is just to suicide, yes, because there's no exit actually, yeah, because whatever you do is wrong. If you have a bad attitude, today it's like rainy like hell. Because you have a bad attitude. It's psychological.
Any other questions?
No, comments maybe.
I think that's a good depressive end.
No, let's not end like this. No. Roman, you have to say something. You don't belong anymore to here.
One of my favorite exhibitions, which I unfortunately missed, was the exhibition of Hans-Ulrich Obrist in his own flat when he was 17, I think. He was very young, and he did a show in his flat in St. Gallen, and it was visited by, I think, 28 people. But this exhibition changed my life. So was also another person that changed my view on art and
yeah.
That are kind to work together with, and maybe it is just, you know, for a few people, you know. But how will you deal with this?
No, it's like where are media here? Okay, media will. Are they going to write about Eva Kutatkova being on the cover of New York Times as the major artist of the current New Museum Triennale? No. Are they going to write about her who just opened an exhibition in a very prestigious MIT? No. This is something to be so proud of. When the National Gallery agrees to send Kupka to Louis Vuitton Foundation, or Bonnard to Musée d'Orsay, or Gauguin to Bayeler, which means the top institutions in the world, this has been perceived as an act of barbarism, instead of something to be proud of. And one fucked up situation with Rousseau, which would be, again, example of pride during the entire Venice Biennale in Palazzo Ducale, but we don't talk about this. So you have reasons to be happy about, proud, and to be used, you know, to strengthen your position and to feel good about it. Yeah. But nobody is kind of noticing it, or nobody picks it up as something that has this potentiality that can plant the seed, you know. That's it. And I think this should be changed. The media are going to, of course, write about Floyd having a problem, you know, with his professorship or something, but nobody is going to write about the fact that for the grand opening over 3,000 people came to the National Gallery. And that's it. So.
Catch the whole city.
No, but it's not the one fire, if there is indeed. It's not enough. That's again what I'm emphasizing, that single position, I mean, individuals are extremely important, but the fire must be collective, you know. And everybody has to contribute. Like, this is my, in a way, if you want to rephrase it, this is my call for help, basically, right? If you don't help me, or if you are not attending, because I know you're busy and so on, but to be responsive, you know, to be positive, basically, you know. And maybe this is the difference between in this national or in this, you know. Yeah, because, you know, I thought that Polish and Czechs, they are identical, you know, but there is a big, you know, as Lenka Lindaurowa used to call it, mezera. There is a big gap, you know, and maybe we can sort of negotiate this, you know, like I'm happy to contribute with my positive attitude to it, but again, you know, like every day in the National Gallery, as you know, is yet another, you know, chapter of depression, yes? So, but I still believe that this is all about human beings, yes, and human beings are flexible beings, and structures are also structures operated by those flexible human beings. So if we only agree that we want to do something that we will enjoy, all of us, then of course we can do it. But it's not, you know, I'm doing it for my own pleasure. I'm contributing. This is, museums are, you know, public service institutions, yes? And if we don't create this or generate this sense of collectivity, then of course this effort will be useless, right? Because it enters or encounters, you know, a thick wall, yeah? Instead of something soft that you can communicate with. So it's also about partnership. It's like working with people like him, possibly people like you, which is about neighborhood. And I've been here for less than a year, but I did not notice any sort of collective events within the city, yes? Like tonight is a nice moment of this openness of everybody, so within this district, as far as I know, right? But I think this sense of working together should be also considered as a virtue in itself, you know. That we just do something that is integral and coherent, you know, and if we emphasize this integrity, then again we're going to be stronger, and then we're going to be more visible. And if we are visible enough within this context, we're going to be immediately visible outside. And then it's going to be easy. It's like a trampoline. And I think so far this place had not been considered as a trampoline. You know, like I'm getting everyday emails from people saying, oh, you know, this fucked up gallery, you know, like we cannot get even any loans because people have bad experience from working with us. So it's now the process of healing, in a sense, of the institution's reputation and image, but that's, you know it, yeah. But I think, and this is my my modest criticism, I just think that kind of you are maybe too passive, you know. Maybe there's certain action should be made, you know. And I know that during the last decade and more, the younger community was able to, or was forced to create a kind of alternative world, yes. But then maybe now the situation is different, so it's time to merge, you know, this alternative, may become part of this official, if you call it mainstream, like the state-run institution, because we can use it, like we can just suck them off, but we can do it only when we are together. As friends.
So Anna, thank you very much for your
No, let's continue.
You're not in a hurry? You don't need to be there?
No, but I can be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
no?
Okay.
Do you have any questions, or can we meet like again in 2 months or something, or do you think that there's still something to talk about, or? Roman, and we meet tomorrow. Yes. Okay, so the publicity now. The next opening in the National Gallery is, I mean, the next event in the National Gallery is in 15 minutes. And there's also this off Biennale, you know, the Budapest Prague branch of Budapest off Biennale. It's also tonight, yeah. And this discussion, but on the 25th of June, there will be like another cluster of openings. We're gonna open AVU, Diplomanti, and it's gonna be a huge show, and I'm sure there will be some refreshments served. If not, the whole thing is gonna be refreshing. We're gonna have the opening of the next chapter of Moving Image Department, which is called The Eclipse of an Innocent Eye. And it will be focused on anthropological, ethnographic, historical element present in moving image, contemporary moving image, film and video based work. And there will be a performance by French artist Jimmy Robert, whom you might know from the last Berlin Biennale. And there will be, from people you might know, the work of Zbynek Baladran, Basim Magdi, or Haris Epaminonda. And then there will be next chapter of so-called introducing. And this time Charlotta Kotig is going to introduce a young upcoming artist. This is a new series in National Gallery program. And last but not least, there will be an opening of a beautiful exhibition of completely unknown Czech architect called Lubor Marek. So 4 different media and different formats, different generations. So again, this diversity which we started from the grand opening with the whole program, so you're gonna see it. Last but not least, the opening of the highlight of summer will be on 21st of July. And this is going to be incredible exhibition called Artists and Prophets, which is produced by the Schirnkunsthalle with a masterful curating of Californian curator Pamela Court. And it's a pioneering research on the influence of strange, weirdo, autodidact, self-taught artists or creative minds, and their influence on the work of Kupka, Schiele, Hundertwasser, Beuys, and Immendorf. And it's going to be really fantastic and extremely sophisticated research on bizarre communities like sects almost, social, cultural, and so on, that had influenced. So this is the subtitle of this show is Secret History of Modernism, you know? 1870 down to 1972. And that's 21st of July. And this is not confirmed yet, but most likely at the opening we're going to have a mind-blowing performance of Jonathan Meze. So that's summer. And then 29th of September, it's going to be autumn. And you can always call me or write an email.